Please listen carefully.
Welcome back to the Focus Target Podcast. This is your host, Smiley. With me today, Van and Shy. Gentlemen, we are
What's up,
here
buddy?
with episode 85 of the Focus Target Podcast. And last week on the Focus Target Podcast, we started talking about the Final Fantasy VII Remake in episode 84, Remaking a Classic. And today we are bringing you part two of that podcast, as we didn't quite get through all of our talking points. As is common on the Focus Target Podcast, we will try to fill an hour since we have so much trouble with that. We have contingency plans to talk about games that we're playing should we not make it all the way through on the topic of Final Fantasy VII. You guys want to put some odds? How much time you think is going to be left at the end of the show for the games we're playing?
12 minutes.
Ooh, that's aggressive. I was going to say less than 5. What do you think, Shy?
Negative 5 minutes. We're gonna go
Yeah,
5 minutes over, just trying to
We're not
finish
going
up.
five.
Just trying to
Yeah.
finish up Final Fantasy VII currently.
Okay, so that's been documented now. So we'll revisit that at the end of the pod. Before we get into Final Fantasy VII, of course, we have a question of the day. That's what we like to do here on the Focus Target Podcast, and harkening back to Final Fantasy VII to kind of get us primed. What My question of the day for you is: which character are you most hopeful will be included as a playable character in Part 2 of the remake? I'm going to start with Van.
This is pretty easy. It's
Oh,
got to be Sid.
damn, you
Oh,
took mine.
that's a good one.
Yeah,
It is
it
pretty
just
easy, I guess.
has to be
Fair
Sid.
enough. Really?
Yeah.
All right, why
Like I
Sid?
was disappointed you couldn't play
Yeah.
Red 13 in one. I think I voiced my opinion on the last episode too. Like that would have been fine. But Sid's my jam, dude. I mean, pilot, engineer, mechanic. I don't know. I just love
You're
me
not
some
any of
Sid.
those things. What are you talking about?
That's true. You're right. Don't check any of those boxes. So he's always my jam, and he's a reoccurring character in all of the Final Fantasy series. So I
Sort of.
just yeah, I guess not all, but in
His,
most.
well, his namesake is, but right, like generally
Right.
it's a different character. It's like
Right.
Sid Rains and
But
Sid
he's
Highwind.
usually kind of
Sid,
mechanically related.
yes,
Something in
yes, he's generally
engineering,
an engineer. Yeah,
a
absolutely.
builder of type of sort,
Yeah.
sometimes a
It's like
pilot,
he
sometimes
has like a
not.
character archetype, right? It's like not the same person, but it's like
Right.
a spiritual Sid
Right.
that just like is like it's almost like we're gonna find out one day that the Final Fantasy is actually Sid's like all the
Oh my
lives
god.
that Sid has
Ooh,
led, like he's like
Oh, I
rebirth.
like
it's just
it.
him. It's
Totally
his reincarnation story.
right,
Like you're
right.
experiencing Sid's different
I
All
lives.
the
really like it.
realities that Sid has been part of.
Oh
That
boy.
could be a
So
podcast.
yeah,
in
the
itself.
point I was going to make though is that I always
Yeah,
look forward to seeing how Sid will manifest in this next iteration of Final Fantasy. So anytime new games come out,
fair,
I'm like, okay, where's Sid going to be here? Where's Sid going to be here? So I'm looking
fair
forward
enough.
to it to see what they're going to do this time too with part 2.
Well, I'll answer next then because my answer is the same. It's also Sid, and that's because as you may know, I one of my favorite weapons in any of these types of kind of action combat RPGs is the polearm. Like I think a spear is a fun weapon. It gives you kind of the best of both worlds of high damage, but also some protection and defense because you're attacking from a distance. They're just fun to wield, and of course, he was just such a badass in the original game. Like spears and explosions like is how I think of him in combat, like lighting dynamites off his cigarette and throwing at people. Like I just feel like in especially in the combat for Final Fantasy VII remake, like he'll be a fun character to play with if they do him well. um I wonder
Ooh,
if we'll get to him. I mean, he would be what?
Focus Target is now live.
Yeah, we
Let me check
that's
that
like
out.
old news. That's like 5 minutes ago.
If you're watching this after the fact, too bad you didn't join us live.
Yeah, in the future you can always join us live. We try to stay to a fairly close schedule. We usually get started around 4:45 Mountain, 3:45 Pacific,
Good to note. Yeah.
5:45. What is that? 5:40, 6:45
Well, maybe more like
Eastern,
10 till, I think. And then we're normally
until
gathering around quarter
5:40
till, and
somewhere in
then
there.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's on Tuesday evenings. So join us in the future if you didn't this time. The last point I'll say about Sid is I wonder if of all the characters, of all the playable characters in Final Fantasy VII, of course Sid is the last one you get, and so we don't. I mean, obviously the first remake only went through Midgar, like hours wise, that would not take us to Sid. I don't think it'd be close, maybe. So it'll be interested to see if Sid actually if
Yeah.
like does the story progress that far, or is he kind of like a Red 13 who maybe is in it but doesn't quite make the cut. We will see. Like it seems like what they said about Red 13 was the reason they didn't want to include him is because he came in so late. They didn't want to just tack him on, and they didn't feel like they had the space to give him a robust kit and all that stuff. And you wonder if the same could be true for Sid. So fingers crossed that he's in it. All right, Shai. What about you? I mean, you're coming from a little bit different place
Yeah.
because having not played the original, you're not. But
Can
let's.
I guess?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Is it gonna be Rufy?
No, well, we already know that Yuffie's coming to the game, right? In
Okay.
the new story. So,
Oh yeah, she's in the add-on,
she's
right?
that's I think like
Yeah,
one of the
she's
big
in.
selling points. Like there's the enhancements for PS5, but then there's her story as well. Um, no, I think, and this is once again I've not played the original 7. I don't actually know a lot of the characters, so it's kind of hard for me to even speak into this. But there was a game that came out when I was in high school back when like it was I don't remember exactly when, but it was like after 8 or after 9. Dirge of Cerberus came out, and I like I'm a huge and I think he uses guns, but I'm a huge fan of gun-based characters. And is it Vincent Valentine? Is that his name? He always just
Right.
looked really cool with the red cloak and like I don't know, like he looked
Good
like
old
a fun
Vincent.
character to play. So
I would say that I would say your pick is probably like if we had to poll the Final Fantasy 7 community, I think my guess is Vincent would be the top of that list. Like maybe Red 13 just because that play style probably is going to feel pretty different being a quadruped. But I bet Vincent's like the fan favorite for like most desired character to play.
really, I thought
And Kamari's
I thought
not in
TG
it, right?
Sid
So
TG says Final Fantasy Tactics,
and
which certainly is
Kamari.
a contemporary.
We're all going all over the place.
I love Kamari. Everybody hates on Kamari.
Shorthorn.
Hornless.
Waka didn't hate on Kamari. He hated on the Albed.
Kamari was
I liked
very
Riku, and everybody thought Riku was annoying.
You mean Rufy? No.
Oh god, I'm uncomfortable. Okay, so question of the day. We're gonna roll right into it. We're still, I mean, obviously, question of the day was right in line with Final Fantasy 7 remake. It wasn't really out of scope, but let's kind of pick up from where we were last time. And so last time we kind of had finished our conversation on like the best parts of the remake, what really we loved about it. And if you'd like to hear that, go back to episode 84, where it's on our YouTube page, it's on Podbean and wherever you find our podcast. If you want to hear some of the nice things we said about the game, which there were quite a few. But let's talk about some things that were lacking from the remake. What didn't you like? What could they have done better? And potentially, like, what of these things are you perhaps hoping they will do better on in part two? Like, what could they rectify in part two that would make it more enjoyable? I'll start with Shy this time. Shy, like, because you were probably again had the cleaner slate. Your visions of what this game should have been are probably a little different from Van and I, having not come from Final Fantasy VII. So, as for more of a pure take, what would you say were the things that were the most lacking or things you were least satisfied with?
Yeah, I don't and the thing is I've really enjoyed the game. So it's going to be difficult. I think, and this may be getting into kind of what we're going to talk about later if we talk about like our expectations of the next game, but I'll start it off with this kind of thought is I felt like and I've been meaning to talk to Van about this for a while. So, as we always say, save it for the pod. So I'll run this by you, Van. But Van, you're a big fan of Metal Gear Solid 5, I know. And there
Yes.
was, so before 5 came out, there was Ground Zeroes, which was like a prequel basically, and like it was almost like a tech demo, right? Like it was I don't know how long was it, like would you say like a 10 to 15 hour game or something, or like maybe not
Probably
that long,
less,
maybe
but yeah.
less.
Yeah.
And then basically then Phantom Pain came out, and it was like then the full 5, like everything, and giant open world game, right? And I wonder like Remake felt so linear, and I know it wasn't like ultra linear. Like, there were obviously side quests you could do and whatever. And the sad thing is, what I'm going to say is probably bad for me as a gamer, because I find that the games I finish are the linear games. So what I hope is that it was almost like the intro to like Final Fantasy, like an open world, because I think isn't that kind of like how Final Fantasy 7 was? Like it obviously wasn't split into multiple games, but wasn't it like at this, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but like up to like this point it was linear, and then it kind of the world kind of opened up. Or at some point does the world open up? I know a lot of Final Fantasies work that way, where it's like linear at the beginning and then the world opens up. Maybe you guys don't want to say anything. I don't know. Maybe I'm going.
I would say yes and no, and I think that's probably why Smiley's struggling to
cool
to agree completely, but kind of sees it.
Never mind.
So
all right.
yes, it opens up in a sense where you
Mm.
can visit other locations at your own free will,
Yeah.
but with regard to story progression and you're really not even allowed to visit all of them at any time. There's
Mm.
certain blockers and things like that.
Gotcha.
What
So,
it re what it really is it's like a false sense of open worldness.
yeah.
You leave Midgar and you get access to the
Mhm.
world map, right? And you can go like you know you can go whichever direction you want, but there's only really like one thing to find in each line, maybe two. Like there's a
Right.
couple one-off side places and
Yeah.
side quests you can do. Like there's Fort Condor, you can get Yuffie in the forest. You know, you can visit a couple other places. There's a couple weird things you can do, but even though the world is open, it's still each area is gated by the next. So you
Yep.
go, you know, from Midgar, you go to the Chocobo Ranch, to the cave, to Junin, to Corel, to Gold Saucer, to
Mhm.
like you're still
Yeah,
following a
you're
very
still
set path.
following. All right.
Yeah.
It does open up much later in the game once you get the airship. Then you kind of get like a number of different like kind of branching where you can kind of do a couple different things in an order of your choosing, and there's much more side
All right.
quests and
All
things
right.
like that.
So, all right. So,
But
not to drag my point on too much,
yeah,
and I'm sure we'll get when we talk about expectations and hopes for part two or the series, we'll get to that more in depth. But I guess what my thing, one area I felt it was lacking was it just felt a little linear. This first
yeah.
installment.
Seven is it's a pretty linear game for most of it, and really until kind of the end game area. All right, but that's still a very good point. They did. I mean, they obviously like all the stuff that wasn't really linear in the remake was added. Like all those like little side quests and like jobs you did in each of the areas. None of that stuff existed really
Hmm.
in the original game. Like that was really to try to flesh it out and make it not feel so linear. Um,
There's a lot that didn't exist.
yeah,
Like the whole traveling with Jesse to the house to
yeah,
go kit bomb parts and everything. Like that whole
yeah.
chapter like did not
Mm.
No,
exist at all.
yeah. Like
But it
you
helped with the
literally
character
go from
development and bonding of characters and stuff like that. So
Mm.
absolutely. Like you go from the reactor 7 mission ends, you go to bed, you wake up the next morning, all right, we're going to reactor 5. Let's
yeah.
this time Tifa's coming. Like everything in between did not happen.
Mm.
Like that's why
And it
it's
felt
only
weird
like
playing it
not
too
that
because
long.
you're like having deja vu because you're like, I just did this. Like I literally just I'm doing the same exact thing.
Yeah, yeah, it is. You kind of go in a different way, but yeah. I mean, that's why I mean that Midgar part's not nearly as long. Like the fact that they stretched it out to the number of hours that they did is really pretty impressive. All right, what about you, Van? What do you think was most lacking from the remake, or what did you
I
miss?
think the use of limit break and um summons was like so I I didn't it almost seemed like summon abilities were dictated by the game only and not by like combat or environment or something like
Yeah,
that. It was hard to predict.
it was kind of it did almost feel like almost like an event in the battle. Like
Right.
you reach a certain
Right.
phase of the battle, and now you
Yeah,
can
like hey,
summon.
you're fighting this person, we will allow you to get a summoner at one or a summon at one point during this battle, but you're fighting this group of people that you may be struggling with or whatever, but we're not going to give you an opportunity to use a summon here. So just a little more free ability to use summons at your choosing. And I get kind of why they don't want that because I know in 7 at least for me like almost every fight opened up with my chocobos running over everybody
Summons
just to get the
definitely
party down.
trivialized a lot in Final Fantasy 7. Well, and I mean, to be fair, like the remake technically shouldn't even have summons, right? Like in the original, you didn't get a summon until you got like the first possible summon to get was kind of a hidden summon at the Chocobo farm,
Right.
which like that's not even in the scope of this game.
Mm.
Like you
Yeah.
don't get Ifrit your first actual
Or
summon
you're going to get
until
Yuffie too, and she shouldn't be in the
right, yeah,
scope of the first
So
iteration either.
it's a different dimension as we talked about last
right.
episode.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean, I know
parallel.
people were wondering that early on, right? Like before the game came out, would summons even be in it? Since
Hmm.
technically you didn't get your first summon until after the events of this game. So,
The
but
other
yeah,
thing
I
wasn't
don't
there
agree. Go ahead.
yeah, and this goes back to combat also. So the way you advanced your summons was by stacking materia, right? So you had like a Shiva summon or Shiva materia, and if you had two Shiva materia, you can stack them, and now you got a level 2 Shiva materia. Or am I remembering that wrong?
You're remembering that wrong. There was only ever one materia of each until you mastered it. It was as you leveled it up. So when you first got Shiva, you could only cast it once per battle, and then once
Mm,
you got it to level 2, then you could cast it twice a battle up to a maximum of 5. Once you mastered it at 5, you
Right.
got another copy of it, so then somebody else could equip it. I
Got
don't
it.
know what
Okay.
happened if you used a master and a level 1 on the same character. Would you get 6 uses? I never had an occasion to summon a
Yeah.
creature more than 6 times, I guess,
Right.
outside
Cool.
of maybe a weapon fight, but yeah. Alright, for me, I couldn't think of a whole lot that I was dissatisfied with, to be honest. I think we're gonna talk a little bit more on kinda some of the marathon boss fights. That's kind of a separate point, so I'll leave that till then. Um, I do I think I mentioned last time one of the things I really liked was the weapon upgrade system. I'd like to see more of that, more like I like crafting in games, and I know there wasn't really a crafting system in the original, so I understand that, but like more like ways to enhance the characters, ways to um, progress over time, whether it's with items or weapons or things. I hope they continue to expand on that and give you ways that you can use your experience, use your fighting rewards, things like that. Use the items that you find in the game to I like that kind of stuff, and I'm glad they put some into it because I didn't think there'd be enough, on the face of it. But yeah, I'm trying to think of other things that I felt were really lacking, and like they kind of put everything that I would have wanted or expected in there, and so I just don't have a lot of complaints, honestly. Um, Anything else either you guys want to address that you didn't get to the first time, Shy maybe or Van?
I think I already mentioned it, but not being able to play Red 13, that was a
Mm,
shocker, but we addressed that already.
Nothing from you, Shy.
Nothing off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, let's talk about one thing that we all definitely noticed, and we can talk about whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. But a lot of the boss fights, especially towards the end of the game, really got very long. The two in particular I'm thinking of were in the Shinra building, which in and of itself was an incredibly long area, and then the fights there. You fought that giant like tank thing with just Eris and Barrett, and that fight took forever, even on
Mhm.
regular mode. I haven't fought it on hard mode. I can't even imagine how long that's gonna take. And it was one of those fights that I failed the first time, and so
Mhm.
like it was kind of like a 20-25 minute waste of time for me. To then I had to then go back and do again. And then of course after that in the final stretch, you basically go on this boss fight marathon where you fight, you have the long motorcycle part, then you fight the giant, road wrecker, and then you go into the fight with Fate, and then you fight Sephiroth, and it's just like one after another after another. How'd you guys feel about that? I'll start with
I,
Van because I know
oh,
Shy had some technical issues too. But before we get
yeah,
to technical,
I felt it was really long, and I don't have a problem with long fights as long as there's a way to recover some of your time in the event that things do go foul. I get that there should be some amount of pressure on you to complete your tasks that are at hand, but without the safety net of a save point or something like that. But like the very last one, right between the three spirits and the final fight. We gave spoilers, right? I mean,
yeah,
clearly we're
yeah,
talking about this and everything. Okay,
yeah.
between
Well,
that
yeah.
and the
If you,
final,
if you missed that from the first episode, this is a spoiler podcast. Please play the game before you're listening to us. Sorry, we should have
uh,
mentioned that earlier.
yeah,
But
I'll
yeah,
give people 5 seconds to shut it off if they want to.
right.
So
I'm out of
yeah,
here,
that should be
guys.
enough time.
All right.
Wait, wait, not you people. So between the spirits and the what are they called? Were they called spirits? Yeah, I guess because they were like
Either the Phantoms.
fire and wind
Yeah.
or something like that. Anyways,
No.
between that and Sephiroth, that fight in and of itself is like a 45-minute stretch where you can't do anything. You can't save, you can't do anything. You go straight into the Sephiroth fight. And when I got into that fight, I was like, man, if something happens in here because I haven't learned the mechanic or I can't figure something out and I have to go back and do that other fight, I don't even know if I would do it. So I remember I put the PlayStation to rest mode. And I think I even talked to you about it, Smiley.
Yeah.
I was like, hey man, this is where I'm at. I don't want any tips or anything like that, but I just want you to know this is where I'm at. Like, should I keep pushing on? Or what should I do here? And you're like, man, like I'm not gonna say anything, just keep pushing on and see what happens. So luckily I ended up beating him, but I do know that some of our other people on here don't have that same experience. But it almost seemed to me like there was a perfect opportunity after that spirit fight and right before going down the black hole to Sephiroth that you can just put a save point right there. They allow you to modify your team, right? To change your equipment, to change your weapons, to do whatever gear change and all that stuff. You know, you can hold triangle or whatever it was to get into that menu, but they didn't allow you to save right before then. And I feel like
They
that
should have, yeah.
just would have, yeah, there absolutely should have been a save point
Especially
there.
that too. Like you have an opportunity to respec. What if you respec wrong? What if you make a bad decision? What if you hit the wrong button and you bring somebody in there with no gear? It's like
So I respect wrong.
that's a place that you should have a chance to recalibrate from.
Yeah, I respect poorly on the previous one because I didn't think we were gonna have certain companions in the fight that we did,
Mm.
Mm.
just because of the way the story was going. So I literally pulled all my materia off of them.
Mm.
Lo and
Yep.
behold, they show up, and I'm like, "Oh, cool, you're fucking useless."
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I
Yeah.
was upset with that. So
If I could go back to the things lacking really quickly.
Yeah,
Now this isn't
please.
lacking, but I guess design decision I wasn't
save
happy
question
with.
marks.
It wasn't the save, it was the switching between party members. Especially what reminded me of that was I think it was the Shinra building at the top as you were like
Yes.
exploring
Oh,
the
that was
things.
so
And like
bad.
the game is built around like there's accessories that if you put them on inactive members, they like decrease damage done to your main characters. And then like
Yeah.
with just like limited material, whatever, like you find that like you're moving things around, all of a sudden you have like 2 new characters, and it's like I'm gonna spend the next like 2 or 3 minutes shuffling stuff around, and like literally 10 minutes later, it's like, oh, the other 2 characters you're now
Well, yeah,
controlling, and it's
and
like
you have to switch like
I'm like,
a
oh my
million
gosh.
times. It's not just like one quick
Oh
over.
no,
You're
it was bad.
unceasing for like 2 hours worth of gameplay of
Yeah,
jumping back and forth.
Yeah,
Sometimes after like 1 or 2 fights, and then you switch back. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
but there
yeah. I
always
remember
were fights
playing.
in there, so you couldn't like if you just didn't if you're just like I'm not gonna equip it this time, you'd always then run into combat and be like, well, shit. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
but then you spend all that time switching everything over, and then you didn't even need it. You automatically switch back to the other two characters. Like it was so annoying. I
yeah,
remember
that
playing
was
with
poorly handled.
what I felt bad was like my daughter loved watching me play this game. And then when we got to that part, like she just kept asking, like, like when are you gonna fight? Like, why are we still, doing this? And I'm like, trust me, I feel the same way you do. Like, I
Well, it's
get it.
funny too because if you remember um, the original Final Fantasy VII had a thing where you could just move all the materia from one person to another,
Right.
Mm,
and if they didn't have enough slots, like that would just fall off. But
Yeah.
like even that would have been at least partially helpful. And like I kind of did that. Like I made sure to set up each of my 2 groups to have the same armor, like the same number of slots, so
mm.
I could at least just do like a quick 1-to-1
Yeah.
and like move them over. And it's like whatever Cloud had, I gave to Tifa, whatever. But man, like, yeah, that I agree, that part sucked. That whole Shinra building part was,
Thinking
kind of
about it, I
exhausting.
guess
Like a slog.
one workaway could have been because you know how you can attach materia to multiple weapons simultaneously, is to have your party all equipped with one weapon, and then when you switch, they can equip another weapon which had the memory of the previous materia on it or something,
Yeah,
and that would auto equip it. But then you're not
yeah,
using the main weapon you want, you're just using the
Yeah,
weapon that had them.
yeah.
Either way, it's a stupid system.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to jump through hoops like that. Yeah,
yeah.
hopefully
Yeah.
if they plan to have another party splitting thing, which I'm sure they will, as they now get more and more characters, and you're probably gonna be set into groups of 3 more
Oh
often.
man, yeah.
Like, I hope they have a better system for handling that.
So before I get into my specific experience, something else I saw recently, I was on YouTube and a group that I follow that we've talked about when we talk about podcasts, the Easy Allies team that they do reviews. They released a review for a JRPG recently, and or it was like a opinion op-ed piece about this JRPG, and the subtitle of the video was like handling a JRPG when you feel like you're done or something, or like when you're getting close to being done but it drags on. Like the idea was that like I think this is a general issue with JRPGs is that like oftentimes they hit a point in like narratively where like the player thinks, oh man, I'm almost there, like maybe a couple more hours and I'll be done, but so often it's like another 10-15 hours or whatever that like it kind of they start dragging on. And like there's a difference between that, I think, narratively, and then like having a bunch of end game stuff that you can do like maybe when you finish the story. But I think I was really feeling that in the 7 remake, like maybe I would say maybe at least 3, if not 5 hours before it was over. I was like, oh yeah, we're probably like an hour away or something. Like I really thought, and like so basically, I think I was talking to you guys. I'd been playing like on a Saturday. Some of the technical difficulties I hit in this marathon, like I'd been playing on that Saturday probably like 5-6 hours already because I kept thinking like, oh man, another hour and I'll be done, another hour and I'll be done, and like I was already kind of at the end of like my patience, and then I got to
Mhm.
this end marathon. And like what happened with me is I was playing it on the PS5, and it's still the PS4 version. The PS5 version hasn't been released yet. I'm not sure if it's a PS5 specific problem, but what happened to me, I got through the motorcycle thing. I got through whatever. I saved at before I went in the portal. I fought the spirits, and I got to Sephiroth. And like Sephiroth, like he's a little intimidating. I know he's like super villain, so I'm gonna really like take my time and try to be careful. And so like since he's a melee attacker, he also seemed really annoying. I was using Cloud's predator stance to do counters, and like within like 30 seconds, I counted him twice, and all of a sudden, this is what would happen is I couldn't like my characters were running around, but I couldn't hit or target Sephiroth. Like the people were moving, like Cloud, Tifa, and Sephiroth were moving around the platform, but no one could hit each other, and nothing was progressing at all. They were just like kind of walking around, looking at each other. I control Cloud, but like all interactivity was gone. I'm like, all right, that's weird. And I was like waiting. I don't know if I like tried to go into rest mode or whatever. Like I tried a couple things out, it didn't work. And I was like, I guess it bugged out. And so what did I do? There's an option. I think if you go into the start menu where you have some options, like you can like recover from like a certain place. And I think two of the
Mhm.
options are there's like at the beginning of the battle and at the
Yeah.
last checkpoint. And
Yeah.
I was like at the beginning of the battle, that might be, I don't know, like if that's just Sephiroth or if that's just
The spirits as
the
well.
spirits. I forget what and this is I'm getting a little hazy. Like I don't know if I repressed it. It's been a couple weeks now, but I did.
No
I'm
one
trying.
would blame you.
I'm trying to remember if I did it. I think what I did was I think I did the battle, and I think it. I don't remember if it takes back to him. I think it might take you back. I think it might take you back to. No, I know what happened. I know what happened. I did checkpoint accidentally. Like I didn't read them super carefully, and it took me back outside of the warp. So basically, before the spirit
You had
fight,
to
and
do
I
the
was
whole thing
so
over again.
frustrated in that moment. I was like, I just did this like hour-long fight. I mean, it's not that long. It just felt really long. Um,
Like
and
45 minutes.
that's why I messaged you guys, and I was like, I'm not super excited right now. Like this is what happened, and I don't even think I jumped right back in. And then later that day, I jumped in, and I was like, I'm not gonna use predator mode at all. Like I'd look online, a couple people had the issue, and they mentioned maybe it was tied to that and it's like PS5 or something. And so I was like, I won't do that at all. But I did use, what did I do this time? I did like Tifa's limit burst or something, and it happened again. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I think this time I did reset the battle, and I think it did start with him. Maybe I may have had to do everything all over again. I don't remember. But then, so basically, what I ended up having to do, I think I had to do the spirit fight 3 times, and I just basically fought Sephiroth basically with almost basic attacks and commands. I didn't use predator mode at all. I never used a limit break, and it was very annoying and actually kind of tense a couple times because like I just wasn't like really bursting him down and like couldn't really protect myself or attack. But I ended up beating it, and I not a great experience, but yeah, that was my
Well, yeah,
experience.
I'm glad you're able to get through it. Like, 'cause that sucks to get so close, and then especially have it go down due to something weird like that. Like that's a sucky situation. So,
Yeah.
so I
What?
think,
Yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
One last thought about that spirit fight. I know we've talked about it a fair amount, but like I think not only was it long, but it was just super annoying with like having to fight like many times 3 boss enemies at one time, and just them like kind of felt like alternating like stacking moves back to back to back all the time, and like
Hmm.
it could just be very frustrating getting like hit by something and then trying to recover, and all of a sudden you're hit by something else, and it's like it really highlighted the things I didn't like about the combat system. So
I felt like the wind spirit was like always the squishiest, so there was
hmm,
like at least to me there was very little tactic for going after the other two
nice.
when I did that fight, and I just kept hitting this wind one, so kind of made it kind of boring and just long and dragged on, like you said. Looking at what they're called.
No, I'm looking at our stream chat.
Oh, nice.
All right. Is there anything notable in the stream chat that you want to address?
We have spammers.
Nice.
So
Welcome,
I just
spammers.
learned how to
See what they
ban. I
think.
just learned how to ban people.
Nice.
See what they think about the last boss fight.
All right. Well, let's get to our final point then, and that is, what are your hopes and expectations for part two? Obviously, this one set the bar pretty high as far as really kind of giving us what I think for the most part as fans we wanted. But how they go from here is really interesting. I mean, the world really does open up, and like you wonder how an open world view is going to feel There's so many ways they can do it. They definitely have a lot of opportunities, I think, to give us some really cool stuff. I'll start with myself this time, and what I'll say is I think that as we talked about earlier, we touched on this that the game really opens up and feels like an open world after Midgar, but it actually isn't really. Still very linear. And I think they have a real opportunity to change that, to really make it like you can still keep the plot fairly linear, but like give us reasons to explore. Like I hope to see like a full open world map, kind of Final Fantasy 15 style that we can explore and like let us find things that as players of the original that we don't expect. Like let me go to a part of the map that before was just empty and be like, oh, there's something here to do. There's a quest, there's an event, there's an item, there's something to find. Like reward me for exploring and help make it feel a little bit less linear, even if the plot is still following point to point. That's one thing that I think they could do that would be a good hybrid of more of an open world without making it too broad while still keeping the narrative kind of focused on the direction we want to go. I'm gonna go back down to Van. Van, what are some of your hopes and expectations for part two?
I don't know how they can not do what I'm about to say as an expectation. So I hope that the pace moves up a little bit faster. And
Oh,
only
sure, because we don't
right,
want
yeah, the
10
narrative.
parts of this remake.
Yeah, because right.
Because that's what it was, right? This was about,
Hmm.
this was probably about 10% of the game, maybe even less. When you say
Probably less. Yeah, I would
probably
say less.
less,
Because so like
5 to 10%.
on average, it's like a 60 to 70 hour game, maybe.
Agree,
And what we played was probably 3 hours.
3 to 5 at best.
Yeah, 3 to 5 hours of it. Yeah, so like they got to move the pace along. So I'm hoping that there's going to be more narrative, more pace. Otherwise, I have no idea how many iterations of we're going to be at part 40 by the time we're done playing the game.
Right, exactly.
I did like the non-core experiences, all the side quests and stuff like that, the new ones and everything. It was something new and fun for long time Final Fantasy fans. But at this point, like as ironic as it is to say, because I know the whole purpose of the remake is to not be so linear one to one with the original game. But I just hope they move the narrative along a little bit quicker and we get to some more familiarity with their little plot twists, their M Night Shyamalan plot twists. So faster paced narrative.
I think that's the first time I've ever heard you say M Night Shyamalan and not
That's
M
true.
Night Shyamalan ding
Ding
dong.
Shyamalan
dong.
ding dong.
That's what
Like
went through
I
my
like
head as
years
well.
since you actually said it the right way. That's incredible. All right, Shai, what about you?
Banner
Again,
day.
without having the same expectations from the original,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what are you looking for in the remake? What's going to keep you playing?
So I'm gonna take Vans. I'm gonna up it a notch. I think it'd be cool if part two is the last part, and whether or not
Whoa.
that means it's like, because especially if the original game was, you said, like 60 to 70 hours, and this was only 3 hours of it, like they could technically go 1 to 1 now and make a 60-hour game, and it would cover everything, right? Theoretically. But like you could even like double that. You could give us probably 120 to 150 hours worth of content in a single game experience. So like nowadays, I mean, you can do more than that. You look at something like Skyrim, where people dump hundreds of hours into a playthrough of that game. So I don't know. I think that'd be cool because I think what's going to be hard is there's already what I mean. We don't even know when part two is coming out, right? I mean, sometime. And so like, and how long did we wait for part one remake? Was that like 4 or 5 years that had been announced and we waited for that, or maybe it was less than that? I don't know. But
No, I think it was four. I think the first announcement was 2012 or 13. Actually, it
like,
was quite a while
let's
ago.
say we have 3 to 4 more years now before part two comes out, and then part two comes out, and let's say there's a third part, and we have another 4 to 5 years before that comes out. I mean, all of a sudden it's like 10 years from now before like this, ends, and that's assuming it's just three
Yeah,
parts. So I think it'd be cool because I'm sure if this is successful, and I think we have to assume the first part was successful. I wonder if
Oh
they're
yeah.
looking at other like Final Fantasies and like what they could look like remade, and even like in different styles. Like, what if they did some of the pixel based Final Fantasies, but in like the Trials of Mana remake style, where it's not like photorealistic like it's like seven, but it's
yeah.
more like 3D, really beautiful, like kind of colorful artwork. Like as a game company, I would want to do something right and then move on to the next thing. To so.
So let me give myself a Smiley's cleanup corner. I feel like it's just because they've been talking about a Final Fantasy 7 remake for like a decade.
Yeah.
So I kind of overestimated. The official announcement was made June 15th, 2015.
All right.
So roughly 4 years, right?
Yeah.
Because or did it come out in 20? So 5 years.
It was 2020 April. Yeah,
2020. So
almost
about
5
so a
years.
little less than 5 years. So not 2013. Sorry about that. That was just false.
I think the other thing too, and I think to justify that, well, until now, but I mean, they had built the whole engine and all the assets for the first remake. Like it was all created. Right now,
Yep.
now they're making the PS5 version, and it's like, well, now they have to like, and they've already talked about how like the PS5 version isn't going to take into account all the features of the PS5 because it's not like built for it, and like.
Right.
I think they've said something. I think Van referenced this last episode, but like they think they've made some comment about like when we've rebuilt the game for the new technology, like then look forward to like having all the enhancements. So like that makes me nervous that I hope they're not going to throw out all the work they like had put into part one of the remake to start from scratch. But yeah, that's
I don't think I can agree with you. I would, especially the way they did. I love the way they added so much, and I hope they'll continue to do that. I hope it won't just be a one for one going forward. I like to see where they're going, and so I would say I would hope for 3 parts. I think the game could be broken down very well into like if the next one, as Van hopes, picks up the pace. If it takes us to like maybe the disc 2-ish time frame, and I don't want to give any spoilers away to Shy, who may not have all the future things, but there's a couple parts where I think would make really nice breaking points. Like kind of a little bit like maybe like midway through disc 2, like that you could get a lot of value and a really wide array of things and still have a disc 3 that is could be very fulfilling and could have a lot of the side quests because like there were so many cool things at the end that like I would really want them to give full attention to and really expand on and give us more of. So that's kind of where I would shoot for 3. I would hope it wouldn't go more than 3. I think if they're like to Van's point, if they're breaking it down, if they're staying at the current clip, like that's just gonna be too much. And I do agree with that. So
Well,
what
we'll be dead by the time they come out with the final one.
well, we maybe did by the time we come out with the second one. You just never know. But
yeah.
every
Yeah.
day is a gift. You gotta live it like it's your last. Van, what do you think? What's your ideal number of remakes? 2, 3, 4,
3.
more? 3? Okay.
Yeah. To equal
Um,
the number of discs on the PlayStation version.
there is some symmetry there.
Yeah, but the PC version had 4, so maybe 3.5.
three with
3.5.
3 with some bonus DLC.
Yeah.
We already got 3.5 because with this 1.5 with the PS5
Oh, that's
version,
true.
it's kind
So
of a
then 3 is
3.5.
perfect.
There you go.
Yeah, works out
Um,
perfectly.
one thing I'd say that I don't think we went to Van on Hope. Oh, we did. We're
Yeah.
gonna go back around. So I'm gonna go again. One thing it's not about hopes and expectations, but I'm curious. I'm so curious what they're gonna do with like levels and skills and materia and
yeah.
all that. Like
It has to
it
carry over. It can't not carry over.
it could not carry over. They
Maybe.
they
Right.
could just start it fresh. But like I don't know. That's why. Like, and the question is like, are they gonna constrain themselves by a level 99 cap? Which has kind of been like I don't think there's ever been a Final Fantasy that's allowed you to get over level 99, other than maybe the RPGs like even did 11 let you go over
I'm trying to
99
remember
or
in
did
the
it?
end in the expansions,
I
could
think
you
it
do it?
did.
I feel like you
Like
could
I
go
think
over like
no, I think it did. It
109
did go to
or
99. It
oh,
was
because originally
9,
it
and
was
then they started doing
75. It was
tier
75
levels.
originally, and then then
Yeah.
you went up to 99.
So like that's always been a thing where 99's kind of been the cap, but like, does it have to be? Like, could they just let you import your save file and okay, if you're level 40, cool. Like now we go, but like, how do you balance that? Like, what if
Yeah.
like, does it give you a huge advantage if I go and grind my characters out to level 99 now, like then I'm like super overpowered or like
Well, no,
there's a
yeah, because
lot of
like
problems.
yeah,
I
for sure. And you know the way that the hardcore works, right, is you continue off of your first playthrough.
Mm-hmm.
So your characters are whatever level they are, starting at the beginning of hardcore mode, right?
hard
So
Yeah.
mode.
Hard mode. Yeah.
hard mode, yeah, hard mode. So then what if you play through a second iteration or a first,
Yeah.
iteration of hard mode? Then your character is going to be level 50, 60, I don't know what that comes out to.
hmm
And then they'll carry over to the beginning of
That's
part
my
2.
point. Like
Like, dude,
it's there's a lot of questions there, and I'm curious how they're going to do that.
Is
That's
it?
what I want to see. Like I'm hoping they'll be talked about beforehand.
I don't know if you guys have tested this, but isn't the level cap in part 150?
I believe it is. Yeah.
All right. So I think that's an answer to like what Van was saying is like they just set a
Yeah.
level cap for each
That's
version. Maybe like the level cap for
that's
part 2 is 75 and the level cap for part 3 is 99 or
that's
whatever,
true.
like
Yeah, and I guess that's true. But
um
again, it's still
And then
gives you the question of like,
but I think they tuned the hard stuff. Like, I don't think they really care how easy the normal is, right? I mean, there's an easy mode. You know what I mean? Like, I think that stuff's there just for like story experience. But I think they tuned the. It seems to me like they tuned the hard stuff for max level anyway. So it's like, if you want a challenge, go to hard mode, and even if you're already max level, you know, and you'll be able to
Yeah,
grind
but
materia
the
and
point
weapons
is, though,
and whatever.
I like Final Fantasy VII, so I'm gonna a remake. So I'm gonna go replay it again in hard mode. Now I'm forced to start part 2 unless I go back to one of my previous save games and have the foresight to know that I have to go back to one of my previous save games. Otherwise, I'm starting part 2 at max level
At level
characters,
15.
and yeah,
And that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the ideal? Like, yeah, no, that's a good point.
Exactly.
Like for a purist, like, what like, what did the designers plan for me to start at? And
right.
that's what makes sense to start with a clean slate every time. But as annoying
Right.
as that might seem, as far as like losing work and progress, and that's another reason why I hope that part 2 is the last part, because I would hate to like do a ton of work in another part and then lose all that for another part and have to start from scratch
Or
again.
they could start you at a hybrid and say, "Hey, we're gonna tell you what skills and stuff you're gonna start with," and it'll kind of be a mix of what you already had in the previous game, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's be weird to see what they
The
do.
biggest question for me is how they're going to handle that and what they're going to
Yeah.
choose to do. So, all right. Any other hopes and expectations that you guys want to talk about?
Yeah, are we still going around? Like, I don't know if
Yeah.
Van was next.
Yeah. Van, you want to go? You got anything?
Oh, I'll just say something that I'm looking forward to is just getting into the Golden Saucer. Like I will spend
Yeah.
hours inside that
I
place
feel like that could
with
be a game
mini
in of
games
itself.
and oh, for sure, dude. Yeah, with all the mini games and chocobo racing and everything, I'm just gonna spend most of my time in there. I'm probably not even gonna finish the game once I get to the Golden
Dude, I'm
Saucer.
excited to see if they have to bring the snowboarding over, right?
I don't know how they
Like
don't.
that was
Yeah,
like I probably spent as much time snowboarding as like not
I
the
always
whole
sucked
rest
at
of the
that.
game, but like I spent a lot of
Yeah,
time snowboarding. Like I maxed all the level, like I unlocked all the courses, all the time trials. Like
yeah.
that snowboarding, that was a fun snowboarding game. It
So
was
does Golden
really good.
Saucer get into disc 2? I think it does.
It has to. It,
Yes, it
again,
has to.
unless we're going at the same pace. But even then, I mean, Golden Saucer's like, that's like kind of the third area. I mean, not that
Yeah,
much happens between the end of Midgard. Like it has to. It has to. Otherwise, we really are talking like a 40-part thing.
right.
Like I'd say like I would say like if it doesn't at least get to Rocket Town and Sid, like that's a disappointment. That's not
Mm.
enough. Like that's got to at least be the end, if not further along. Maybe Temple of the Ancients, something like that. I don't know.
Ooh.
You heard it
What
here
do you guys
first.
got?
If it doesn't make it to Rocket Town, it's a disappointment out of the mouth
That's not
of
putting.
Smiley.
That just means it's going to be too many parts. It just is.
Yeah.
Like, you can't. You got to at least get to Rocket Town. Like at least introduce the full cast to us for Christ's
Right.
sake. Jesus.
Well, I've got to drag this out for another 22 minutes for my bet to succeed. So, why don't you guys tell me a little bit about what Gold Saucer was like in Final Fantasy VII? I only know Gold
No,
Saucer from 14. Like, I only know, like,
that
it's, you know.
well, I mean, Gold Saucer from 14 obviously was.
Besides, like, snowboarding, like, what were some of the, like, other, like, mini games or, like, activities that were notable? Was there chocobo racing?
Chocobo racing.
There was
Nice.
chocobo racing that you could only bet on it at first, but in disc 3 you'd come back and actually race yourself, raise your own chocobos to race, which was a whole system in and of itself. It was an opportunity to go back and do the bike game, so like you could basically replay the bike mission from
No.
Yeah, your favorite part.
and the snowboard, like when you first get there, the snowboarding is actually not available because you haven't gotten to that in the actual game. You actually have to snowboard it as part of the plot first, and then you can play the snowboarding mini game. And then there's a bunch of little ones. There's like a little like boxing game that you could do. That was kind of a rock paper scissory one. There was a Moogle, help the Moogle reproduce or something weird by giving them weird nuts. Um,
Oh, dear.
help the Moogle get a nut. No, it's
Oh,
for real.
dear.
But it was kind of like a puzzle game where you kind of had to like do the right steps to do it. Like um, there was a
Huh.
roller coaster, a shooty roller coaster. We like zap things. Um,
All right. There's something
there's
like
a
that
haunted
in
mansion.
Gold Saucer in 14 as well, like the roller coaster
Yeah,
thing. Huh. All right.
there you go.
I'm also interested to see in part 2, like what's going to happen with Kyrie, that minor character in the remake.
Oh,
Yeah.
the reporter girl, or whatever,
Yeah,
the
she
niece
kind
to
of
the
came in
chief
and
or
had
whatever,
like this
or the granddaughter.
pretty not significant, but surely purposeful role in the first one, and then kind of just fizzles out to nothing.
You
And I'm like,
wonder,
that
Well,
can't be all. There has to be more to Kyrie than
probably
that.
that other dude too. What was the biker
Johnny?
dude? Rocks.
Oh, Rocks.
No.
Oh,
Rocked.
Roach.
Yeah, Roche.
Roach.
Roach.
Yeah, Roche.
I'm
Roach,
sure he'll
however
be
you want to.
back.
There were a
Yeah.
couple
I'm sure a
named
lot of those
characters like
characters show up.
Johnny, the deadbeat, guy who loved Tifa. Like, I mean,
Now, Johnny was actually from the original. He got
right.
fleshed out quite a bit,
Yeah,
but
he
he did have a crush on Tifa in the original, and
he didn't die though,
uh,
right? So I guess all I'm saying is I wouldn't be surprised if he came back. I don't think he
I don't,
died.
I don't. You could tell me if I'm wrong, Van. I think the last time we see him is he can't decide whether or not to go into the Honeybee Inn,
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
and then he's like,
Yeah, that's a good point. That'd be another one. See what the
And
heck's going
the
on.
thief, who knows if she could make a reappearance.
that
The
was
thief of
when
the
he was talking
slums.
about Kyrie.
No,
Oh, you mean
Kyrie
the
was
old
the
lady?
granddaughter. Yeah, the old lady, the actual
Oh,
thief. Yeah,
the angel of the
angel
slums.
of the slums. Yeah.
She was the angel the whole time.
Oh my gosh.
Shocker.
All right. I know you guys may have already spoke. Well, but it's a remake, so even though you guys' experience with the original may not matter, but I would hope that at some point we can actually get to a point where we can fully control our own party and be done with some of this like forced party comp BS.
Oh,
'Cause
choosing who you
yeah,
bring.
yeah,
and
who you
not-
bring and who you play as. Like I've
Yeah, it's
never
the-
been a fan of that in RPGs. And then like there's the RPGs out there where you have to fight like party members that you leveled up, and it's like, oh my gosh, like this stinks. So like I
Well, in the
Yeah.
original, literally like as soon as you leave Midgar, like you're literally like couldn't be more the next thing that happens is Barrett gives you the PHS, which is the party handling system,
Hmm.
that lets you choose who is in the party and who is not
Nice.
basically from that point out, other than certain specific events. So
And I guess I would be
So-
okay with specific events, but I would like to just control my party and like pick my
Yeah.
favorites and just run through that way. Yeah, but we didn't really talk about like we were talking about hopes and expectations. We didn't talk, and maybe this fits into hopes, but like dreads, like or things we hope not, things we don't hope to see. But like,
anti-hopes.
but if we want to do around to
Fears?
that, yeah, fears. So we do round to that. Let me start that off because you mentioned the bike minigame and the gold saucer, and a fear of mine is that the bike minigame becomes a recurring thing or like
It's so iconic.
a story,
though.
a narrative element. We're always on the bike fighting bosses or enemies. I think it'd be interesting to see. The only thing I would like to see with the bike would be maybe them treating it almost like the Regalia in 15, where like you actually travel the world on the bike, and maybe it feel like it's not an on rails thing that you don't feel like you have a lot of control over. Like you actually it becomes a vehicle you traverse the world on. I think that could be kind of cool. But besides that, I don't want more of those on rail minigame events.
All right, fair enough. What about you, Van? Any fears?
No, I kind of just gave mine or kind of talked about it the first time, just dragging on the narrative, the story.
Right. My fear, I would say, is that they just don't represent the rest of the game as well as they have at the beginning. That they're like, I know it seemed like one of the
Like the
biggest
last season of
emphasis.
Game of Thrones, they just kind of
Yeah, you can make that. Yeah,
throw
or
in the
just
towel.
it feels like they really like kind of the impetus behind this was that they were like, we never got to show Midgar the way we envisioned it.
Right.
Okay, and they did that. They made a whole game just out of that. Do they have the same passion for the rest of the world, which they did, I think, show very well? Like, I don't feel like you have that same, I mean, Junin was pretty cool. Like, it basically was what it was, correct. Like, I think a lot, like even
Castle
Gold
del
Set,
Sol, that'd be fun just to hang out there for a little bit.
it just, it seems like I hope that they give it the same kind. Like, I hope I'm like as impressed with their level of detail and that they flesh out the overworld as well as they did Midgar. Because I've always loved overworld maps in any RPG. Like, one of my biggest disappointments was 10 was it didn't have one, and I was like, oh man, like come on. So, all right. Any other final thoughts on Final Fantasy VII Remake?
Awesome game. Highly
Yep.
recommended if it wasn't said enough. Really looking forward to part 2.
Yeah.
We'll probably have a third podcast, I imagine, coming up at some point when we've all played Intergrade and maybe had a chance to clean up platinums and different stuff that we still have to do with this.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see
There's-
how they do Yuffie and just what they add to the PS5 version.
Man,
This overworld is so huge.
if we
Like,
could,
they gotta move.
Hmm.
if we could talk about a newbie anticipation thing, like I'm really interested in seeing what happens with Wu Tai, because like at the end, I don't care if we've already given a spoiler tag, but at the end of the remake, this remake, they're kind of like Wu Tai is this enemy, like according to the government. But we also know the Avalanche is the enemy. Now Avalanche isn't great, they're terrorists, but we also know that they're doing it for a certain reason, whatever. And so like you're kind of getting that feeling that maybe Wutai is maybe that war between Wutai might be contrived as well. I don't know, and like this is speculation on my part, but like you kind of see the government's treating one party and they're treating another party the same way, and unfortunately I know that Yuffie is from Wutai and that she is a protagonistic character. So, but not that she's like official Wutai. She could be like a rebel. I'm really excited to see how that all plays out.
There's definitely the lore from the original game, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with it.
That's a good point because they don't need to follow it, right? So.
All right, well, I guess that wraps up our Final Fantasy VII remake coverage for now. As you mentioned, we'll come back to it after the PS5 stuff, see how that goes, and see if what's there is even worth doing a pod about. I'm probably sure it will be, and hopefully, maybe even by then, maybe they'll have given us some indication of how close Final Fantasy Remake 2 is. We got a little time left. I'd say probably Van was the closest. What you said, 12 minutes? I'd say we probably got about 8 or 9. So let's talk about what we've
My
been playing.
prize.
Van and I will probably take up all the time on Valheim.
That'll
So
take up
let's
an
hear.
episode in and of itself.
It will.
Like
So we'll have to
really
keep that
will. So
short.
right.
So let's go to Shy. Maybe that could be our next episode. Let's
I
go to
think so.
Shy and talk about. Let's talk about what's been in your slate, Shy. What have you been
Yeah,
playing?
I wonder if maybe we need a more extended disc in the drive in general at some point, but just I guess
Sounds
like
great.
quick one-offs after
Maybe that's
finishing.
the next one.
Oh, after finishing 7 Remake, I went into Persona 5 Royal. There was a big spring sale on the PlayStation Store, which I was able to get that really affordable. I had never played the Royal version of it and have been enjoying that. And then I picked up 14 again. I've been playing with an old friend of ours, Gelfratis. Been playing some Final Fantasy 14. When you mentioned Sid has been playing a big part in the current, like the most recent patch just dropped, and yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Why don't we just give our little teasers and let's
Little
just
teasers,
go straight
yeah.
into
We don't need to
the
go
drive
in
next
depth.
week.
We don't need to go in depth.
Yeah.
Sounds good, Van.
Yeah, I'm not playing anything. I don't like video games.
Nice.
I wish we didn't have documented video evidence to the contrary.
Oh, I guess you're right. We do have plenty of documented evidence. Yeah, so majority of the time has certainly been taken up with Valheim. And just yeah, it's a short, I don't know, man. I want to say masterpiece. There's still some stuff that has to happen, but it certainly has all the hallmarks of a masterpiece. So it'll be
For an
interesting to see
early
where it goes,
access game,
considering
it's
it's
pretty impressive.
exactly considering it. But I feel like a lot of, and I'm not saying that Coffee Stain does this because they did, Deep Rock Galactic and all the other games that we loved and talked about so much. But like, some people hide behind, oh, it's just a pre-alpha game kind of tag, and then when really it was the intent of the whole game in the first place. Sorry, I have kids yelling. My kids, so not some random kids. Yeah, so Valheim but more another game though is I just started playing, and this is one that I've been wanting to get to for a couple of years now, is Detroit Become Human.
Ooh.
So I'm really looking forward to talking about that on our Disc in the Drive.
Cool. Yeah, we will look forward to that as well. Obviously, I've been playing Valheim a lot with Van, and I've been cameo.
Guest
What's this?
appearance.
We need an introduction.
Oh, we got a double guest. We have Amelia, and then we have Michaela down there.
Hi.
Like you're disappearing on our screen. Weird.
Ghosts.
Yeah, and it's me too. All right.
Nice.
Very nice. Our podcast has just gotten a much needed infusion of cuteness.
There we go.
So I've been doing a lot of Valheim with Van and by myself and with Z and some of our other friends. That game has been a lot of real blast. And I'll probably talk a little bit about Legends of Eidolon, which is a game
Nice.
that it's a mobile game and a Steam game. Now, since it just released on Steam, I figured it's a good time to talk about. It's a pretty solid one. So looks like Van is being overrun down there. He's fighting off the hordes, but
Might be our segue.
They don't want to leave until I unwrap their candy for them. And I asked them to go ask mom to unwrap it, and they were like, no, they want me to unwrap it. Kids are so specific.
Those the dad hands, right? You got the finger strength to unwrap that candy.
That's the way it goes. All right. So yeah, there you go. You got a teaser for next time. Next time we'll plan to do a disc in the drive. We'll go deep on some of these games, maybe some other ones if we get to them. Any final thoughts today before we wrap up episode 85 and I give you guys the contact information and spiel? Van, anything?
Nobody. Bring on part 2. Let's go. Let's not take
Shy?
7 years.
Yeah. One more part. One more part.
2 more parts. 2 more parts.
Shy, don't ruin this for me. Come on.
It's gonna be an amazing part. You won't. It'll be the best part ever made. Don't know. I can't do it. I can't do it.
No other parts like it.
We'll hope so. All right. Well, if you want to share your thoughts on the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, how many parts should there be? Tell us who's right. Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 5? What's the number? We want to hear from you. We can be found on the Focus Target Podcast, the Twitter handle at Focus Target, on YouTube, Focus Target Podcast, and via email, focustargetpodcast@gmail.com. Obviously, if you're watching live with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Focus Target Podcast, you can also find some of our old videos on there, and on YouTube, we have all of our previous episodes as well as the streams we do. And we haven't been streaming a whole lot the last week. I've been a little bit under the weather, and we haven't had as much time in the evenings, I feel like. So instead of doing shorter streams, we've kind of just said whatever. But we'll try to get back into that, try to get you guys some more content out there to follow our Valheim. And Smiley's retro gaming corner has not been a thing because Valheim is not a retro game. So sorry, folks, but we'll get back to that at some point as well. So thanks for being with us. This is the Focus Target spot. This is the Focus Target Podcast. I'm your host, Smiley.
This is Shy.
And I'm Van. As always, cover us, Porkins. We're out.